Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special bonus episode of 1001 Album Complaints. It's the podcast where lifelong musicians and friends get together to dissect the albums on Robert Dimery's list of the 1001 albums you must hear before you die. So normally we pick an album at random, we analyze it, we praise it, we shit on it, and ultimately give you our jackass opinions on whether or not you need to hear it. However, for this episode, at the request of numerous emails that we've gotten, we're going to switch things up a little bit. So while we're technically 9 days away for this guy's 70th birthday on April 10th, we're going to be reviewing the debut album from one of the most influential guitarists and songwriters of the last 30 years. That's right, I'm talking about none other than Mr. Steven Seagal and his debut album titled Songs from the Crystal Cave. Now, if you haven't listened to this album yet, don't worry. We'll be throwing in lots of clips along the way. We'll also compile a playlist.
Like anybody hasn't listened to this album, Adam. Come on.
I hadn't heard this album.
Really? I put this up there with like Abbey Road and Let It Be, so I'm very surprised that that just strikes me as odd, Phil, because you're a...
I think that lamestream media has kind of tried to bury it in years past. Yeah.
Right. So right at the top here, though, I want to remind everyone that if you're listening to this and you're digging what you're hearing, make sure you like, subscribe, rate, review, whatever you need to do. Spread the word. Tell a friend. We really appreciate all the support that you guys are giving us. We love doing this. This is just a fantastic excuse to get together and hang out with friends. Now, in 2009, in an interview in Rolling Stone, Clay Aiken, who also performs on this album, said of Steven Seagal that, quote, his talent is soulful because he leads with his heart and spirit. He's absolutely there, ever present with honest intensity in his offerings, which leave me blubbering with the hairs erect on my arms and legs, dancing on my own, talking to myself with feelings that everything is going to be all right. Truth, man. Truth. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you guys a quick taste of the album, which has been called a mind-bending mix of alternative country, reggae, world music, Jamaican dancehall, and new age disco. Then we'll come back with some quick introductions of the crew today, along with some quick tweet-length reviews of the album. So in the event that you've been living under a rock, Phil, or living on Mars, or perhaps under a rock on Mars, here's the song Lollipop from the album Songs from the Crystal Cave.
She was created a little lower than the angels.
Yes, you see me, I say, my girl lollipop. My girl lollipop. You make my heart go giddy up. You are as sweet as candy. You are my sugar dandy.
When me love her, and me not stop love her. Me no care what people want say. Me lollipop, she's a girl, and me love her, that's right. No care what people want say. When me love her, and me not stop love her. Me no care what people want say. Me lollipop, she's a special girl, and me love her. Me no care what people want say. Well, every man have a girl.
All right, so that was Lollipop from Steven Seagal's debut album, Songs from the Crystal Cave. Let's work our way around the room, and let's throw it over to Rob first.
Yeah, this was one that I knew a little bit from my college days. It was the kind of record you'd throw on if you had a lady over, perhaps. But I didn't exactly know what I was going to find when I got back in. So my tweet-length review is, I was a little pleasantly surprised. It was like drinking champagne out of coconuts on a tropical island. The blend of southern blues and reggaeton club music really hits the sweet spot and relaxes me to the max. Congrats, Steven.
Well said. Phil, let's hear your review.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying there, Rob. I mean, I hear you on the reggaeton. I think this was an interesting choice to kick off the pod. Like, as somebody who was new, and I was floored by this record. I mean, I don't know. Maybe my expectations were misaligned because when I think of Steven Seagal, like, I think of Hard to Kill. I think of Under Siege.
His movie career does overshadow.
Yeah, like I just think of something else.
Right.
Yeah,
It's really a shame that does too.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a triple threat. But like for me, like I really connected more with the song, like at the songs at the top of the record, like "Girl, It's All Right," "Don't You Cry," like the stuff that's more in that like Clay Aiken wheelhouse, right?
Sure.
You know, like the
A little more mainstreamy.
yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's got a folky sort of, yeah. I mean, he's a talented songwriter.
Tom, what'd you think?
I'm going to keep it short and simple. This is what authentic music sounds like, okay? This is a masterwork from a true master. I can't say anything more than that. The music speaks for itself.
Nice. Alan, thoughts?
You know, this album reminded me a lot of, like, I thought about John Mayer a lot and his career arc, where started as, you know, somebody with really no credibility, took on some new work, evolved his sound, played with, you know, Pino Palladino, did blues, now he plays with the Dead. And he pulls it off, right? So, and I see a similar career arc with Seagal, where he takes on this, you know, diversifies his artistic portfolio and actually, you know, does a credible job.
Is he like a pinch hitter? Because he just knocks it out of the park, right? I mean,
Right,
come on.
totally.
And there's Mayer tones all over this record. I mean, classic Strat sounds. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this is Adam, and my quick review, I might not even be that quick, but that little clip that we just played leads me in a direction that I think it's a good overall representation of the album. And one theme that runs through this album is that he's a master of efficiency in vocal delivery. And what I mean by that is that he utilizes so many other people to deliver the lyrics on this album. It's just brilliant. So people have said that in his movies, he often can't be bothered to film a scene where he walks across the room or picks up a bag off the floor, right? He gets stuntmen to do that. And I think the outsourcing of the trivial aspects of this album, namely the lyrics, it really shines through on his delivery overall. So I enjoyed it just a ton.
You know, it fits with his movie career, where he is often playing military roles. And what do they say in the military? Find the best guy for the best job. The best guy for the job, right?
Straight.
Yeah.
And you know what? And now that you say that, like, that makes sense that you went with Lollipop to kick off the show. Like, when you told me that this was like an album that you love so much. Now that makes sense. Like, because this really does, I think, illustrate that perfectly.
Well, look, I mean, here's the question I have. What's not to like about someone who's singing about really universal themes, right? So, you know, war, jealousy, music, and punani.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's totally identifiable for just, even for mainstream pop. So, yeah, I think he's knocking it out of the park there. So just a bit of background on our friend, Mr. Steven Seagal here. So Stephen Frederick Seagal was born in Lansing, Michigan in 1952. And you guys will recognize Lansing as the burgeoning music scene during the 60s and 70s. They had a lot of hot acts come out of there. And then in his teens, he really got obsessed with rock music. His mother noted that he spent most of his time in his room listening to rock music. So Seagal flew out to Las Vegas, where he went to high school at the Las Vegas Academy of the Performing Arts, and ultimately went to college at Juilliard in New York, where he double majored in theater and music.
Wasn't he? I heard somewhere that he maybe was classmates with Christopher Walken at Juilliard. Did I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
totally.
know
Yep.
if that was like a pop-up video or something.
Yeah, that's right. And you can see just the genius. A lot of his acting really makes its way into this album musically as well.
I was gonna say theatric. That's what I ascribe to so many of these lyrics and so much of the delivery. It's just theatric. Like the emotion really comes through.
Yeah, that's what I was struck with as well, that we always sit here and complain about songs that don't have a clear beginning, middle, and an end, that tell a story in an arc, that climax and resolve. This album has all that and more.
So his big breakout movie, just looking at his acting career quickly, was Under Siege, which was released in 1992. If you don't remember, it featured Seagal as an ex-Navy SEAL stopping terrorists. So that movie grossed $152 million worldwide.
It's not enough.
He pumped a lot of that back into his music career. Wanting more money to continue his musical expansion, he quickly followed up Under Siege with Under Siege 2, spelled T-O-O, which featured Seagal and Steve Guttenberg as single parents trying to balance life in the big city while trying to stop a Russian drug syndicate in New York City. So that didn't do nearly as well. So he got a little upset, I think, in the acting career, and eventually wound up really going hard on the music.
But again, like you see it there, like he's taking chances there, right? Like he could have followed up.
Who would have thought a
right,
dad
with,
buddy
like,
comedy?
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Hollywood will chew you up
not
and spit you out.
satisfying.
So it's. I'm not surprised that he left the '90s feeling a little bit jaded. But I feel like this album definitely replicates his movies in that his movies were very diverse, right? So it wasn't just one genre. Like he really had a portfolio of different genres that he dipped into, and I think this album is exactly like that.
Well, I mean, coming off the reggaeton of Lollipop, like let's jump into the next track.
No, wait. We're not just gonna gloss over Lollipop and we have to get into the depth of these lyrics for a second, okay?
We're gonna jump into Lollipop in just a second. I wanted to do a quick by the numbers. We love doing by the numbers here. It really helps put perspective on a person's career and their life. So he released 2 back-to-back albums, Songs from the Crystal Cave and Mojo Priest. He won 2 Grammys, one for each album for Best Male Combat Vocal. Globally, his albums have sold over 60 million copies. He owns over 235 guitars. He's got over 2,000 guitar picks, well over 150 guitar straps, and boasts a collection of almost 100 distortion pedals. So right there really shows you that this is a guy who is really serious about music and just
Dedication to his craft.
Yeah, he's a craftsman. Definitely a craftsman, you know?
Yeah, you can see why Stevie Wonder wanted to work with him. Stevie Wonder is featured on this album, playing harmonica, and it's just.
I'm surprised, like I think that makes sense. So that Stevie Wonder couldn't carve out like a larger role on this album because it's just so star-studded.
I was gonna say it was really nice of Steven Seagal to give Stevie Wonder an opportunity to kind of find a wider audience. He'd been kind of pigeonholed into this whole like soulful pop thing, and
and he would have been in like I just called to say I love you, sort of like Dune at this time,
And like nobody's heard that song, right? Like,
Right,
and so you really get this ability for again Steven Seagal. I think that something that's going to be a through line on here. He's just a good dude. He's just always helping people out. Just a great dude in general.
Sure. One other thing, too, before we jump back into Lollipop, just to talk about some of the personnel on the album. I mentioned Stevie Wonder playing harmonica. Steven Seagal, not only does he do the vocals with quite close to a 2-octave range, he plays rhythm and lead guitar, drums, percussion, and the clay pot, which we know is a remarkably, nuanced instrument to play to get really good sound out of it. And he absolutely nails it. It just shows that, again, the dedication to the craft. We talk about people who, it's in the effort. You think about Air, right? It's like they produced that album with just hard work and dedication, and that just comes through on this one.
Yeah, I'd never heard clay pot before. It's really
Like,
cool.
what doesn't Steven Seagal nail? Everything. Like, you guys remember famously his Saturday Night Live hosting performance where he was lauded as the best host that Saturday Night Live has ever had. He just kills it from comedy to action to deep drama.
One might say he has a license to kill, or is hard to kill.
Totally. Definitely. Well done, sir.
He is indeed above the law. I think that's fair. No, he actually, I learned this recently from a comedy bit. He's like a part-time police officer too. So, if you're ever in the New Orleans or Louisiana area, you could potentially get arrested by Steven Seagal. And to me, that's sort of mind-blowing as well.
Well, let's not forget that he spent some time over in Belarus inspecting watermelons and eating large carrots with some of the local farmers there, kind of helping them out.
Oh. Yes, I saw that clip. It's really heartwarming.
Humanitarian.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, again, the guy just gives and gives and gives.
I do take issue with some people ripping on Lawman because he's a deputy. He was deputized, which people say, oh, anybody can get deputized, and they compare him to Dwight on The Office. I take issue with that because Dwight from The Office was a fake reality show. Lawman is a real reality show. And so I just like to make that distinction because people like to rip on Seagal for that aspect as well.
Well, and when you talk about defunding the police, you're affecting the livelihood of someone like Steven Seagal. And so I think that needs to be accounted for.
All right, so I managed to stumble across, there was a documentary, a really nice looking documentary on YouTube about Steven Seagal called God Amongst Men. And it was just talking about some of the underlying aspects of the music industry that he's been in. Like, I know we talk about Carole King, it's like if there's a song and you don't know who wrote it, it's either David Bowie or Carole King. You can add Steven Seagal to that list. He wrote the remix to Ignition for R. Kelly, Whoa. My Heart Will Go On for Celine Dion, and Where the Streets Have No Name that U2 made famous. So the guy's just a powerhouse lyrically as well.
He also, look, he writes songs that people want to imitate as well. So you look at his list, right? He writes a song called Better Man. I looked in Spotify, and Pearl Jam fucking did the same exact song.
Totally.
He does a song called Don't
off,
You Cry.
dude.
And then I look in Guns N' Roses does the same thing. So he's clearly influencing.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a song called Music, and look at how many people in the modern world are using that term to describe what they do.
Totally. Progenitor of the scene of the term. So let's get back into Lollipop, and we'll play another quick clip of that.
My girl, Lollipop, you make my heart go giddy up. You set the world on fire. You are my one desire. My girl, Lollipop, you make my heart go giddy up. You set the world on fire. You are my one desire. I love you, I love you, I love you so. But I don't want you to know. I need you, I need you, I need you so. And I'll never let you.
I listen. I draw a line between a lot of what he's doing here and directly. We like to talk about the musical descendants and the connections in the musical canon. I draw a line between this directly to the stuff that Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak have been doing with Silk Sonic.
Totally see that. Yep.
So I want to know, who are the horn players on this song? Because there's no way that those are synth horns. Those must be real
I think
horns,
it
right?
might have been the Dap Kings, actually.
I mean, they're
at least that's
really
what it sounds
fantastic. And listen, like island rap, where have you been my entire life?
Sure.
I didn't know
Well,
I wanted that.
It's not just like the islandy horns, that are like dead center in the mix. It's like there's that like Phil Spector wall of sound, strings, but it's like hard panned. I can't even tell if it's synth or I don't know.
No, it's definitely got to be real.
I would tend to agree. I mean, when did this come out? 2004.
2004, yes.
Whoa, what?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. We can look that up. But it's either way, it's amazing.
Wow, I thought this was I thought this was much earlier, to be honest with you. So I'm really impressed that he was able to call back those sounds.
Yeah, it's
classic.
Listen, we've done this many times on many different podcasts. I apologize, dear listeners. I'm gonna have the same comment on so many of these songs, but the depth of the lyrics. I mean, you're as sweet as candy. You are my sugar dandy. I mean, come on. I say that to my wife, and she's just like purring like a kitten. And she's just, like, what more do you need to express your love than a rhyme as complex as, sweet as candy, sugar dandy?
But then he comes in at the end of that verse or the chorus and says, I love you, but I don't want you to know. And so just that tension of, there's just a lot of interpretation there and a lot to sink your teeth into as you're kind of evaluating the material.
We see here in this song too that a theme that you will see throughout the album is that he so accurately mimics the Jamaican accent, which I think that as an Islander, people probably really appreciate him changing
totally.
his vocal stylings to match the people that he's talking to or singing to. I think it's a brilliant way. Alan, you mentioned Lawman. I know that he is famous, and law enforcement appreciate learning from him that when you're speaking to people of different cultures, that you should mimic how they talk in order to really come off authentic and
That's
associate with them. Yeah.
That's an absolutely great point. And that brings up another thing that this record reminded me of, speaking of accents, is Joe Pesci's work on when he cut that album where he was as his character from My Cousin Vinny and really taking on that persona and leaning in. So I feel like in the lineage of celebrity albums, those two are really, really high up on my list.
Sure.
The one thing that I will say is that the thing, especially vocally, that really carries through just on every track is just the effort. You can tell that he is just pushing and really giving it his all on these vocals. And give the man a lot of credit. He's leaving it all out there. There's not a lot to be left to the imagination. It's this raw and real performance that I can't help but want to re-listen to it.
Pathos is what I wrote down, Tom. Pathos.
Yes,
so yeah, I'm right there.
All
absolutely.
over the place.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just going to push back slightly because I know clearly we're all on the same page of this album. I'm just going to have one kind of slight criticism. And I think he shows a little too much restraint on some of his guitar solos where you can tell that if he just wanted to, he could really push the envelope and just give you something that just blows your mind. But he knows exactly when to hold back. And
Well, that's a great transition point, Alan, actually, into the next song on our focus list, which really features his guitar work. It's a song called Route 23. So let's drop a little bit of that in here now.
My, found in a shoebox. My daddy people came from far away. Mama left on the porch to the rich folks. My daddy had to work to pay. Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Kentucky, Texarkana. All came to see what they could see. Chasing that long, tall tale about the good life. We were told that was up Route 23.
All right, thoughts.
Man, it's like Little Wing and BB King.
Right?
Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes,
All at the same time.
absolutely.
I heard, and I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but I heard that when he was a teenager, he happened to stumble across Stevie Ray Vaughan, who was touring because Stevie Ray Vaughan was playing out a lot as a teenager, and that he actually gave him some lessons and gave him like a way to make the blues sound more original and not just stock blues stuff. And this really showed me that probably is true because, I mean, stock blues, not at all. Just a really fresh interpretation on a way to approach guitar playing and scales,
dude,
he certainly doesn't just
box at all.
he doesn't end it on the 4 and wait for the 1 to come back around before he starts a phrase. He's just carrying them on through. It catches you off guard so much.
Yeah.
And it's from a geography point of view, this is a solid one too. Goes through the various southern states.
Oh yeah, like he goes through like Alabama, Mississippi.
Well, and he
Kentucky.
claims he's a Russian
Texarkana.
citizen. I don't know if you're aware of that. He's a Russian citizen.
Really?
Do you guys remember? There's a Ricky Gervais show, and I think it's a documentary. And at one point, Liam Neeson comes in and talks about how he was hired to play to be in Schindler's List because he always made lists. Right. So I think that there might be a through line here about making lists of American states and just singing them that really it is on the same acting. It's like he's mixing that acting skill with the songwriting in something as complex as list making.
Well, it's the heartland of America, and I think there's just a lot to be inspired by, with those references.
He's telling a story about an older time, right? A time when, the good life really was just up Route 23,
Yeah.
Sure.
Before everybody got cancer from the steel in the coal mines,
Well, it said my daddy had to work to pay.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
that just spoke to me. My dad had to work to pay too.
Fuck yeah.
Like it's just crazy. And
Everyone
listen,
can identify with that. Yeah.
I've complained about this on multiple podcasts, but I really, really have to tip my hat, a doff to the gentleman's cap to Steven Seagal on this one, with just a masterful ending to this song. He really nails it. Like, I hate it when a song just kind of piddles out when there's not a focused ending and they didn't just, it's just either fade or write an ending, give me a hard hit on the chord or something like that.
Dude, I
But
couldn't agree more.
he really just, again, softball over the plate, knocked it out of the park.
Totally.
It's
He pistol
dinking
whips
somebody's
it.
car in the parking lot. Yeah.
He pistol whipped it. Yes, accurate, Phil. We'll drop that ending in here, just because I think it's really powerful for our listeners to hear.
Smooth as butter on glass.
All right, so we're going to keep this thing moving along. Listeners, we're going to try to keep it short. This is a bonus episode, so we want to make sure we keep it tight and super interesting for you guys who have all requested this. So we are going to move right along to the next song on our list, which is called War.
There's always a story, but we never know what it's for. They say we're going to war, but it's never what we say we're fighting for. Greed, lies, and hate, murder, senseless killing, and it's all because of what? War! Well, it might be tobacco, or it might be a little oil, it might be some big business, or a little tiny piece of soil. Greed, lies, and hate, and it's all because of what?
All right, so this truly felt, for me, like a groundbreaking song. I think it's potentially one of the first songs I've ever heard about war. I mean, it's such a common concept. I mean, we grow up with it, but I don't know that I've really heard that much of it put into music and lyric in such a consumable format. Maybe that might be a little too technical, but that was my vibe.
Man, that's heavy. I never thought about that. Fuck.
It's funny. I had a couple of songs that I had earmarked as having talked about war before in just a completely inferior way, because this completely surpasses like Bob Dylan's Masters of War, Edwin Starr's War, like Black Sabbath's War Pigs, all of them. I feel like they tried to
Those
get
are about
at the
war.
root of the subject matter, but
didn't.
this
maybe
one
it's
really
like-
got it.
You, as you're listening to the song, you are struck with the question of wondering, like, war, like, I mean, like, what is it really good for? Really nothing. And as you can see in our
I
current
would say
situation
nothing.
right now,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Russia, it's just, absolutely nothing.
It's a timely song as well. It's timely at any time because there's always conflict going on. I think this is one of those ageless songs.
I found myself thinking, finally, a famous actor who really has something to say about politics. Like, that was exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
And he very famously used his career to show the consequence and the brutal reality of war.
On desert
Certainly
ground.
didn't dramatize it in a way that made it seem entertainment. He had a message behind it, and the vocal delivery in this song, you can really get the frustration and the anger out of his vocal delivery. Somebody might come onto this track and just kind of deliver a little bit of like a type of vocal and think that was appropriate for the subject matter, but no, he really brings it. And I like goosebumps, guys. The hairs raised on my arm.
Well, it kind of reminded me of we did Rage Against the Machine recently, and it's one thing to have the anger, and the message that you're trying to push, but sometimes it's manufactured, and but when you lay it over like a really great musical foundation like Rage, where that music holds up regardless of the lyrics, I think it's, you know, there's a case to be made, you know, to compare the two.
Yeah. Yeah. The call and response I thought was extremely effective. It's all because of what, and then the backup singers shout war, which was just
my note is
fantastic.
This is how you do group vocals right. It's so hard to get group vocals correct, but these just like you really got it. You got the sense that this is just an angry group of people who are like in line for the draft or something and like, war. No, why am I here? It's because of war.
Right. Yeah, really it humanizes it on this album. Yeah, man. Right there with you.
Visionary.
All right, we're going to keep things moving right along to the next song on our focus list. This one is a bit of a dance. It's a bit of a dance song, right? It gets things moving. It picks up the pace a little bit. This tune is called Strut.
Mr. Steven Seagal, fly down to Jamaica and say one of the baddest gal. So them send for Lady Stark, I don't know me raw. You see me? So,
Girl, would you really want that night?
me want the body if it make me feel nice. Why? Tell me what you really want all night.
Me want the bananas if it make me
Me
nice.
want the body, him want the punani. I mean, know it nice. So,
When the girls start to strut, you could look at their butt, you shouldn't do that. The girl dress is just a pity, not just there to cover her kitty.
when me a fling it up, you better know fi back it up. When me a dash
So when I listened to this back in the day, I thought of this one as the hit. I don't know what charting it did, but I thought of this as the single. I'm not sure if they released it. I seem to remember a music video at some point.
Yeah, they did release it. This did remarkably well. In fact, this was the one that kind of put the album over the top on the pop charts. Again, it's danceable. It's got a really a message that you can really associate with. There's kind of a personal story that I might be a little bit biased on this song, but my wife and I, this was actually the first dance at our wedding, and we also used some of the lyrics for the vows at the church. And so I'm probably
I
not
didn't know
the
that
best
you were really
person.
this into Seagal. I really
Yeah,
did.
man. Well, this
Like
is
I knew
a
about
time.
some other weird stuff, like Gentle Giant and whatnot. But
Yeah,
man,
right.
you know,
I went down that rabbit hole,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this stuff is timeless. I mean, the lyrics that when a girl starts to strut, you can look at their butt. You shouldn't do that. They've got a dress. It's such a pity, not just there to cover her kitty. I mean, this.
Well, he's right. You shouldn't
was-
do that. I mean,
You know,
Right, exactly.
Here's the funny
He's a
thing.
feminist.
What most people don't know is Steven Seagal has been an ally for women throughout most of his career. I heard a story
Right.
that actually he was so dedicated to women's empowerment that he would offer like young up and coming actresses like one-on-one acting lessons that he'd give them on his own time, like in the evening in his hotel
For
room. He'd
free?
just invite them up for free and be like, hey, why don't you come up to my room and I'll give you a little bit of an acting lesson. So like just an ally left and right. And
to help them get ahead in the
to
industry.
help them
right.
get ahead. And I feel like it has to be said. We've covered a good amount of rappers on this podcast so far, but his flow just puts them all to shame. I mean,
Sick. Yep.
the fact that he can not only be this rhythmic and stylistic with his vocals, but also be completely intelligible the whole time, that's a really
Right.
hard line to
Well, I
walk.
mean, he's such a vocal chameleon. Like, I can't even tell which vocalist he is on this track. It's amazing. Like, it's amazing.
Right. So the woman who raps on this is called Lady Saw, and usually she's very hard to get. She's very in demand, but he's got that pull, right? He's got that that cred that allows him to go explore some of these island musicians, some of these Jamaican stars, and get them in on his album. So that really just speaks to, I mean, just how much of a command he has of the industry.
Can we talk a little bit about the cleverness of the lyrics on this song? Because
Yes.
they really must be noted.
Sure.
He's got the line, "Me love the way you walk. Sometimes the way you talk is so hot. Now you know, let's have a shot of rum. Then me can make you come with me to the ocean. That would be fine." It's like he does a great job. I'm just like, oh my god, he's going to talk about making you
telling us
come.
He's
That
got,
would be kind of
he's
crazy.
got like a little like double entendre
Yeah,
there.
but then he says
Yeah.
like with me to the ocean, and I'm like, oh, it totally makes sense that you're saying me and like
But it's also like family
me
friendly,
love,
like
yeah.
if you want it to be, right?
exactly
Right,
yeah.
like this was one of the lyrics that we used in our vows as well. And I even did the, I don't know if it's culturally acceptable, but I said me, right? Mimicking that
Yeah.
Jamaican style,
So
like he
I
does.
and I thing, like yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
I think it's safe to say
I think
that
the priest was happy with it.
this song was probably the reason that you got any punani that night. So I think he's probably directly responsible.
Probably,
Yeah,
probably a good bet.
In the hands of a less delicate lyricist, I think the use of punani continually in a song could come off as kind of cringy.
Right,
But
right.
man, he handles it with kid gloves, and he really just lands it every time. Every time he says punani, I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and me want the punani,
Right.
You know what I noted here was, like, they talk about in older jazz music a lot of times. They'd be like, "Oh, Coltrane's doing a solo," and in the middle of the solo, he quotes another song. And what I loved here, I think it happens around the 120 mark, that Seagal makes a sly reference to an undeniable Bob Marley classic deep cut called "Jammin'."
Oh,
That-
yeah.
I don't even know that song.
I did.
That's a-
You know what? I had to
It's a Marley
look that
tune?
up and listen to it for the first time because of this, and I was like, "Wow, this song is actually pretty." I mean, I want to jam it with you, And is he talking about having sex there? Because that's a little crude on the part of Bob Marley. He clearly did not handle that with enough delicacy.
As
Yeah,
as
Steven
as
Seagal
classy
did.
as
Yeah, where he
Seagal,
said,
right.
"Me want the punani."
Class act.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna wrap this thing up here. We're gonna bring it home with the last track on our Focus album. This one is called Music.
If you sing with me, we can fill the world with harmony. If you dance with me, we can create a better place to be. Walk with me, feel me musically. You gotta let the music be the remedy. If you sing with me, we can change the world with a melody. Desperation, abomination. Disintegration, yeah. Degradation.
So I gotta say, with a song title like this, you're really expecting something musical. And is this I think this is the tune that has the 5/1 chord progression. And that
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's definitely music.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, usually with a chord progression that is just a couple of chords, I would get kind of tired of it over time. But this was just such a strong and inventive interval that I really was like, yes, keep giving it to me. I don't want you to change over the chorus. I want you to keep it consistent the entire time. And by the way, masterful
straight.
work to start with the chorus. The fact that he started with it's such a strong chorus that I need it
Very
right
savvy,
up front.
yeah.
And I'm really glad that he started with the chorus. I mean, that's just a pro move. You write a chorus like that, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh my god, like what am I not going to
Give
put
them
this
what they
8 times
want,
in the
you
song?
know?
Come on, yeah, exactly.
Well, and the way that
Yep.
he, so it was just such a nice change of pace. So only he could pull this off, right? So it's like the song starts, it's a kind of blues, typical blues fare, and then bam, reggae just out of nowhere.
oh,
Who does that?
That
huge
transition.
note. I was like, man, like I got to this point. I kind of need another reggaeton break. Is there another reggaeton break in the offing? And boom, right when I wanted it, he gave it to me. Just the
Telepathic.
work of a real master of his craft.
the guitar solo on this, by the way, is I was floored, honestly. I'm not trying to fawn. I apologize to the listeners if it sounds like we're fawning over Steven Seagal. I recognize we're trying to cram some stuff in here to a shorter bonus episode, but the guitar solo is just
I honestly thought I was listening to Eric
unbelievable.
Clapton at times. Like it just seemed
Right.
like just
Right, that level of mastery. And his
He takes you on a journey. It really
So
was. It was a
tasteful.
journey. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a big fan of the hammer-on, which is one of the harder things to...
And the
we
wah-wah
talked
pedal.
about.
The wah-wah pedal.
Yeah, right. So I think Rob and Tom, you guys weren't on our John Martin episode.
Correct.
We had talked about the guy who plays upright bass with John Martin is just a beast, right? He, first off, upright bass is a fretless instrument, and then he's playing harmonics on top of that, which is a very nuanced, soft touch. Same thing with this hammer-on, right? So you put your, for listeners who aren't familiar with a hammer-on, you put your finger on the neck of the guitar, and then you take another finger and put it on the next fret, and you take it off and put it on and off and on, and it gets this like doodle little little little
You do
little,
it real fast.
and you do it real fast, and it's just indescribable, and he absolutely nails
it's
it
a real
on this
pro
entire
move.
album.
It took
yeah,
me,
totally.
It took me a long time to be able to master that technique. Personally, I still to this
it's
day I
on
struggle
nearly
with it.
I mean,
it's
you're
on
not
nearly
Steven Seagal,
every
dude.
song. Right. You are not above the law.
I'm
Tom.
immortal. I am immortal.
Yes.
Yes, I am actually relatively easy to kill.
All right, so that's going to round out our deep dive. Like I said, we're trying to keep this tight for our bonus episode for our fans. Fans, what am I talking about? Our listeners.
Fan singular.
It's fan singular. So we're at the end here. We want to do what we always do in every episode. We work our way around the room, and we all vote on whether or not this deserves to be on the list of the 1001 albums you have to hear before you die, and whether or not you actually need to listen to this. So let's work our way around the room. We're going to throw this over to Rob first.
Yeah, it's an unqualified yes for me. Like a billiard ball stuffed into a novelty sock and swung around a roadside bar, this packs a wallop.
Phil, what are your thoughts?
So I was super skeptical going into this. I mean, maybe just because, Steven Seagal, and again, like we covered it many times, I just think of him as like a real martial arts movie star, just like, powerhouse. But I mean, Crystal Cave was shocking. I mean, definitely top 10, instant top 10. I mean, yeah, definitely a yes, hard yes. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had known sooner.
Great. All right, Tom, thoughts?
I mean, is this the top 101 albums you must hear before you die? Because even so, it's still on the list. I can't imagine somebody goes through their entire existence and is not exposed to the genius that is Steven Seagal. And not just because of how amazing the performance is, because the performance is amazing. But you have just such a through line to so many different areas of musical exploration that came out of this. He's clearly such an influencer, and I personally am going to be changing my approach to writing and performing music because of how this album really struck me to my core. It's like a roundhouse kick to the chest of musical sound and experience and taste and effort, and I mean, totally not a dashed off vanity project at all. Just a complete tour de force. 100%.
Yeah.
Quadruple thumbs up.
All right, Alan, thoughts?
Like, what else can be said here? I think I'll just let Steven himself do the talking here. He says music will set us free, and I really can't disagree with that. So, I'm just going to leave it at that. Let him do the talking. It's obviously a yes for me.
Nice. So this is Adam, and there are moments when you're listening to music where, as I think Tom had mentioned, where you get that ASMR thing where you actually, the hair on your arm actually stands up. You feel the electricity running up your neck and back. And it's almost a pseudo-spiritual experience. Sometimes it's triggered by a harmony for me. Sometimes it's triggered by a really nice chord progression or a chord change for me. This album, that happened to me every track. This just blew my mind, and it has been blowing my mind since it came out. I've been listening to it. Phil, I was actually floored that you hadn't. This was not on your top 10 list. Or
Dude,
just
no. This is.
your routine
This
plays.
is 61 minutes of majesty.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now that we've already
Yeah.
We've already got
Definitely
4 out of
Sonic
5 or a yes, so
Sure,
it
Sonic
doesn't really
Alchemy.
matter what I say, but I am an obvious yes. So Steven Seagal, you are on the list with your fantastic album, Songs from the Crystal Cave. If you want to as well, go check out Mojo Priest. It's pretty good. Doesn't really rise to the level of Songs from the Crystal Cave. But there you have it, Steven, you're on the list. We are going to wrap things up. Don't forget, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, please drop us an email at 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com. That's 1001albumcomplaints@gmail.com.
Steven Skull, if you're listening, please write us a note. I know you're a big fan of this podcast.
Sure,
so I
sure.
would love to hear about the different production techniques and the approach that you took to songwriting, the integrity that you take. We just want to mimic it. So please reach out and let us know.
You know, Tom, you say it's funny, and I know we're wrapping it up, but one thing when I dove in that made me sort of immediately think like this is going to be great is that I saw that he went to Canada to make it.
It was in Mississauga,
It's
Canada,
always-
which we all know
always,
is
always
like
go to Canada.
it's a mecca of music studios, and the Guess Who were there. Michael Bublé was there.
Yeah.
Other Canadian people were there.
It's like L.A., Muscle Shoals, Mississauga.
Right.
You know?
Yes. Right. Known for shipping and being like a shipping hub, and then also music production and pop
Isn't
acts.
that where the new
So-
pornographers hail from? I think they've done some work up there.
It's right outside of Toronto, I think. Yeah, just shortly
yep.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you have it. All right. That's going to wrap it up for us here at 1001 Album Complaints. Thank you for hanging out with us on this bonus episode. So, on that note, I'm Adam.
I'm Rob.
I'm Tom.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Alan.
Executive Boosh.
Oh yeah, Steven Seagal. Still rocking those yellow-ass sunglasses, dressed in fatigues all the time, like he's gonna fight somebody, always ready to kick some ass. Yeah! Oh yeah, Neil Sedaka representing today.
Let me sing your song.
Yeah, Steven Seagal had a bunch of movies. Here we go, above the law, hard to kill, marked for death, out for justice, under siege, on deadly ground, under siege too, dark territory, executive decision, the Glimmer Man, fire down below, my giant, the patriot, not even the trees, Prince of Central Park, the path beyond, exit wounds, ticker, half past dead, the foreigner, out for a kill, belly of the beast, out of reach, Clementine, into the sun, submerged, today you die, Dragon Squad, Black Dawn, mercenary for justice, Shadow Man, attack force, flight of fury, urban justice, pistol whip, kilt switch, yeah, against the dark, driven to kill, the keeper, a dangerous man, machete, sheep impact, born to raise hell, maximum conviction, force of execution, a good man, gut shot straight, absolution, code of honor, sniper, the Asian connection, end of a gun, contract to kill the perfect weapon, cartels, China salesman, attrition, general commander, beyond the law, yeah, Steven Seagal representing, don't forget about Lawman, kicking ass all over the USA, getting exhausted from standing up, walking across the room. Yo, Neil Sedaka, bring that shit back in.
Let me sing your song.
The Office was a fake reality show. Lawman is a real reality show. And so I just like to make that distinction because people like to rip on Seagal for that aspect as well.
Well, and when you talk about defunding the police, you're affecting the livelihood of someone like Steven Seagal. And so I think that needs to be accounted for.
We're gonna edit these out.
We should just keep using it.
I was kindly there, Alan.
Let me sing your song.
He writes songs that people want to imitate as well. So you look at his list, right? He writes a song called Better Man. I looked in Spotify and Pearl Jam fucking did the same exact song.
Totally
He does a song
ripped
called
him
Don't
off.
You Cry.
Dude.
And then I look in Guns N' Roses does the same thing. So he's clearly influencing.
He's got a song called Music, and think about how many people create something that they...
Sorry. Can you try that again? Sorry, Rob. I'm sorry. Can you try that again? I'll go off camera or something.
Let me sing your song.
And it's from a geography point of view, this is a solid one too. Goes through the various southern states.
Oh yeah, like he goes through like Alabama, Mississippi.
Well, and he claims
He's really
a
into
Russian
lists.
citizen. I don't know if you're aware of
Right?
that. He's a Russian citizen, and the fact that he can,